check.
You gave me a text. This is Tokyo.
Yeah.
I did. When they got done playing around, they just drove around them and went on through.
Did you see two nice little waves? You got to go up against them. Oh, that's too funny. Can't regulate. The committee meeting on technology, special meeting of Thursday, July 20th. Please come to order. Clerk, read the roll.
Adel.
Here.
Ella.
Here.
Drake.
Here.
Bardot. Gentile.
Mm-hmm.
Salemi. Taylor. And then we also have Commissioners Mandyke, Johnson on the WebEx, and Jameson Sinclair from Connecticut Deep.
And also we have Commissioners Curry and Patel.
Yes.
Public comments relative to agenda items. Approval of minutes of July 14th, 2020 attached. So motion.
Second.
Second. Are there any additions or deletions? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. For discussion regarding 2023 RFI-01 submittal of REA Resource Recovery Systems. Scott, you want to start?
Sure.
This is a
Scott Jellison.
conversation with our staff and.
Yeah, I mean, I think I guess what we anticipated this meeting to be was to really get some feedback from the committee and the commissioners as to what they heard. REA was here last week and explained and addressed did a proposal and addressed some of the concerns outlined in the questions and answers. And really, I guess this meeting is to really talk through what the committee felt the answers represented and staff's opinion of the answers. I go really simple here. I mean, and we've said this at the last couple of meetings. If we don't get through the first 30 questions, then there's a problem, right? So the first question I had, which I asked at the end, was how much biodiesel have you produced? And they haven't produced any yet. So you start there, right? You really start there because everything that's being proposed is the assumption that it works. And I know Commissioner Drake has said, well, let's assume it works. And I agree with you, but they haven't produced any biodiesel yet. So that's where I start. There's other issues that, we could get into details on the chemistry stuff, but it doesn't, the first 30 some odd questions are really built around, the first 34 questions are built around, does this make sense for the MDC? And then the rest of the questions are more talking about the specifics of the proposal, the chemistry of the proposal. So I really think it's, in my view, I just look at this really simple as, does this work? Right? To your question, Commissioner Drake, does it work? We've had multiple meetings where we talked about waiting a year, let the project get started, let it operate for a year, and let's analyze it. It's been much more than a year, obviously, somewhat since we've had that conversation, but to date, they haven't produced a gallon of biodiesel. So I think we should talk about that in general. I mean, that's the starting point, right? The renewable biodiesel industry, that's a whole different animal. That's a big discussion. But in basic terms, my position is the starting point of this conversation is they haven't produced a gallon of biodiesel yet. So what do we do?
I think that's the point of commercialization, and I think that's the issue we've discussed with them for the last 2 years. Obviously, the pandemic set them back in their ability to get parts and get things which they apparently went around. Then there's a gas problem, wasn't there, down there, them getting gas to the plant? At least that's what they articulated. So, I mean, the question is, I guess all they've produced is 5,000 gallons of biodiesel in New Haven at one point in time, but nothing that would be commercial. And I guess what was at the last meeting they were talking about it starting up when?
Well, in their answers, they don't, that's what is part of my concern, is that the answer was to number 3. My question was, how much biodiesel has been produced at Danbury? And the answer was, REA has extracted brown grease as a crude biofuel at a rate of about 200 gallons per day and will expand to about 800 gallons per day in the next month. My question to them, is that biodiesel? And the answer is no, that's the feedstock. So they have, in the next month, they will get to 800 gallons per day, but they have yet to produce a gallon of biodiesel. And that's the question. You know, I have a question, can you produce it? And then if you did produce it, to your question, Commissioner Drake, who'd you sell it to? How much you sell it for? And what's the credits, what's the RINs, all that good stuff that goes into the business model of it. But I really go back to really simple. They haven't produced a gallon of biodiesel yet.
So
now what?
Commissioner Drake?
maybe do we just put this aside for 6 months to a year and come back? I mean,
I don't know how you analyze something without.
if this was me sitting here by myself and it was my money,
Yep.
I would make the assumption that they can do it. Okay, let's make it. And again, we'd have to go back. Do you have anybody in here that has the ability to look at what the revenues could be versus? And I'm not talking about building it. And assuming it's paid for, I don't care about paying for it. But we have this thing in operation somewhere between the 2.5 million to 5 million gallons per year. That's what
Where's it coming from? Where's the?
No. I'm going to go back. No, I'm saying that someone has to do that. Right. I'm going to go back. So,
Right.
They said the sweet spot for us would be 2.5 to 5 million gallons a year. And it's two things. Do you have anybody in your place, MDC, with the ability to say, again, I don't care what it costs, everything's paid for or we're running. Are the numbers available? We can decide if it's viable or not, assuming it works without putting a ton of effort into this.
So
Maybe make some phone calls and say,
Yeah.
"Can we get the feedstock?"
So you got to remember that their proposal, and you touched on this in the presentation. I'm going to ask you a question. You're a Weathersfield Town Council member on planning and zoning, right? You're in the town of Weathersfield, and a developer comes in and says to you, "I got this great idea, and I'm going to make the town of Weathersfield a lot of money. However, I need your money, starting money, to do a preliminary design. I need you as a partner in town of Weathersfield to help us determine if our proposal is actually going to work." Okay, but that's what has to happen. What they did not do is exactly what we need to do. You're asking us no. The answer is they're saying that there's 1.2 million gallons of fats, oils, and grease in our system. Tom, do we know if that's true?
I have no idea, Scott.
So we can't guesstimate. They're proposing to produce 5 million gallons of biodiesel, and the feedstock is 1.2 million gallons. So where's the rest of it coming from? How much fats, oils, and grease do you need to make 5 million gallons of biodiesel? I don't know.
That wasn't my idea of what they said. It was that they were going to, there was a DEEP model that they were following. And the DEEP model was that they were going to go to other wastewater treatment facilities, and that's where they were going to get their feedstock, okay? And I guess the question is, but before you can do that, you have to have a commercialized product. And that's what you're saying, Scott.
Yeah. Well,
and I agree with you.
Yeah, Who's on from Deep?
Yeah.
Jameson.
Who was on?
Jameson, are you there? Scott Jellison? Jameson, could you address that issue? I mean, have you, you were on the meeting last Friday, right? Okay, and just a question on the issue about REA's
The commercial.
discussion about how they're going to get. Can you just talk about your involvement in this? Have you had conversations with REA and talk about what you've been involved with at regional on the pilot and then at Danbury?
Losing them?
Yeah, we're losing you, Jameson. We're losing your
Your transmission.
your audio. Yeah, you're still you're faint. Nope.
You were good. No, we can't get him out.
In the car.
Hello? Yeah, losing?
He just muted and unmuted himself.
He's on mute?
I think he's just trying to fix it.
Oh.
He's unmuted.
He's still on.
Yeah.
Well,
Still talking.
yeah, I mean,
I want to ask about the Danbury self-determined whether or not they need air permits. I don't know how that works.
Going back to that though, right now, is any of that important though?
Sure. Because if you can't get a permit, Commissioner.
I understand that, but stop a minute. Forget all that stuff. If this isn't viable financially,
Well,
why do you even bother with this?
I go back to my question number 3. I mean, you say it works. I say they haven't produced a gallon of biodiesel yet. I mean, should we waste any time? I mean, really, I mean, should we waste an ounce of energy if it's not commercial, it's not, you know, and so how much money and time, as you know, and I know because I sat with REA in the chairman's office about 2 years ago, and they wanted us to fund $300,000 of preliminary design. That's their model. Their model is, I want you as a partner, and then you give me $300,000, and we design and figure it out if we can make it work or not. So I don't look any farther than question number 3. Did you produce a gallon of biodiesel? Yes or no? And if you did, tell me how you sold it. Tell me how much RINs. Professor Parnas said in the presentation and in his answers, he talks about, I don't know if this is true or not. He talks about all these credits and all these RINs that add up to $9.25. What he did say in his answers, and he said here, was, you're talking about the financial, I'll look at the response where he responds
Is
to
it
it.
7?
Number 7. He said in his presentation, the mixer gets the dollar, not us. So we thought we had a partner in REA, right? But in answer number 7, there's actually 4 partners. There's REA, there's the MDC, there's a mixer, and then there's the person who's selling the product who's going to get the RIN. Okay? So if that's true, and I don't pretend to know that if this is true or not.
So it's 925.
But if it's
minus those-
925, you got to subtract the dollar, you got to subtract the RIN. So the money that's available to the MDC and REA is not 925. It's much less. I don't know what the number is, but it's
worth
much
$5.
less. But if they also said in their answers, I said, how much does it cost you to produce a gallon of biodiesel? They said $3.46. How do I know that? You haven't produced it yet. You haven't produced 1 gallon. So how much is biodiesel selling for at the pump?
Okay, but let's.
Okay,
do
sorry.
this.
Jameson, are you there?
Back in.
Sorry. Yes.
Okay. We were on air permits.
So Jameson, Scott Jellison again. So just answer this question. So what REA said in the presentation was they did not see any significant differences. They didn't have any problems at Danbury, and therefore they didn't see any significant problems on air permitting at the MDC's project. So you're suggesting that that's not true, right? Two different. Okay, thank you.
Well, James and Bill DeBella, what, didn't they also talk about a wheel and spoke, process that they were dealing with deep on, and it actually was a predetermined process that they spent 8 years ago, DEEP had to do with it? Are you familiar?
But Jameson, the question is, REA has said in 2 different public meetings, one here at BPW about a year and a half ago, and the other day, last Friday, that hub and spoke program that they've presented numerous times was approved by DEEP.
Right. He said it evolved out of it. It had been, what, 8 years prior?
Okay, and who would that be, Jameson? Who would that be?
Municipal what?
Nisha. Okay, Nisha was at our meeting. Was at our meeting last time. So okay, we'll talk to Nisha about that. Okay, great. Thank you, Jameson. And then in terms of, just so I understand, Jameson, at what point would, obviously we're going through an RFI process, which is just requesting information.
Right.
And it might go further and looking further or not. But if it went further, at what point would we need to bring deep in to start looking at this as whether or not the air emissions would require a permit? So we would have to go through and design and spend monies. And just remember, and Bob, you're here. So the proposal that REA suggested was we need a partner. They said that to me in this room here about a year and a half ago. And my partner is you. So we need $300,000 to do the preliminary design, or 300 of 600. So that's to determine if the proposal works or if it is even makes sense financially for all of us. So Bob, where would that money come from if we had to come up with 300,000, 500,000? Would we capitalize that, or?
No, you can't borrow.
Could you get to the mic?
Could you? Yeah.
Yes, come sit at the table, Bob.
Why don't you guys sit
Yeah.
at the table? The rest of the staff.
Yeah, Tom, if you want to come,
Tom,
Chris,
why don't you guys
Kelly.
all sit around the table so you can respond to the microphone?
Yep.
You can't bond for a proof of concept, just like you wouldn't bond for a strategic plan that is not being funneled towards an asset. You also have the issue of, let's say it does ultimately become an asset. You can't. We have an 18-month window where we can use those funds that we borrowed before it actually becomes an asset, you know. And so if you spent money up to 18 months before the construction, and then you can charge it to it. But I got here in July of 2021. And we were told, oh, come see our facility in September. And then it was delayed. And so, I mean, it's almost been 2 years since we've been talking about that. There's no way any spending today would ever make it, or would ever be available for bonding. So that would come out of ad valorem. We'd have to raise money to pay for this operating expense.
You made it perfectly clear, the board did, and back to us as this issue, that until it was commercialized, they were not interested in moving forward. And we were told, what was it, 2 months or 2 years ago, that they are 6 months away. Then you and I and
Yeah, it's
Chris
changed.
down.
Yeah, the date's been changing, and it could be COVID. It could have been, supply and demand. I don't know, but the end result is Bob's right. So we spent, and I've said this before, we spent about $300,000 analyzing wind turbines. We paid cash.
Yeah.
300,000 cash. So anytime we're just studying something, we can't capitalize it. We'd have to have an MOU with a private developer, and we'd be sharing. I'm assuming he wants to share. He doesn't want us to pay the whole thing, Commissioner Drake. but I go.
I didn't pick up, not to interrupt again, but
Yeah.
the meeting last week, I didn't pick up that at all. That we were going to be partners in this. Why would we want to be partners in this thing? I missed that because
Yeah.
basically, I'm going to go back to what I heard. I wrote it down.
Yep.
There's 124 waste treatment plants in Connecticut. They stayed, whatever the dream is, to have 4 people pick it up. We pick up 1/4. And that would be a plant in the 2.5 to 5 million gallon range. And they had all the numbers. And he said a couple of times to me, they would provide us a black box, and we would provide everything around it to feed the black box. So the question is, I don't know why we'd finance them. I don't, that's not the,
Right.
I wouldn't even suggest it. I wouldn't do that. They can get their own financing. That's not our world. But they sell us a black box, but before we even forget it, I get permits, that's all fine stuff, but can't, they have a sheet here with their revenue versus cost. Is there any way internally we can look at this and say, does this make any sense at all, or we just stop,
We
move
don't
on?
have any information from them to even determine that, right? They,
I understand, but can we get information ourselves based on that?
no, because we're, to your point, Commissioner, you said, where's this stuff coming from, right? We don't know.
I don't know, it's coming out of 1/4 of these 124 people, that's where it's coming
Well,
from.
who are the people?
Oh, I assume maybe you know that, there's 124 waste treatment plants.
I would tell you this, is that the answer to this is, I've got a lot of questions here, right? I look at it this way. The renewable biodiesel market has changed everything. And if what you read, and we provided everyone with copies of the information, the answers is this brown biodiesel is 1% of the market. That's in their answers. 1% of the market.
It was 3%.
They also talked, no, 1%. They also talked about the fact that, well, if, they were very vague about if what's going to happen with biodiesel in terms of brown biodiesel, in terms of the traditional biodiesel and how you produce it and the air emissions and all those things associated with it. And their answer was, well, we could possibly and be able to mix it with renewable at some future date. Well, why would we need to remix it with renewable? We're going to build a facility that's only been good for 3 or 4 or 5, 7, 8 years, and then you're going to have to find a way to remix it. We're wasting our time because I don't see a gallon of biodiesel built. It's not produced. I truly believe the right thing for the committee is let them produce the biodiesel. Let them become commercial, as the chairman said. Let them show us that they can do this on a commercial level. Let them show us that they have a market. The question is, I have no idea. I sat in a conference call with our staff a year and a half ago. You have the email with Cohn Resnick, and they had, I forgot the name of the company, but it's in the email. They talked to us about the market. It's the stock market. You know, these guys are buying and selling biodiesel on the stock market, and they were reluctant to even waste our time talking to them because we didn't have anything. We weren't buying anything from them. They were only there because they were Cohn Resnick's client, so they were willing to talk to us. And it is the stock market. It's very complicated. It's changing on a daily basis. I just think that if they haven't produced a gallon of biodiesel, we're wasting our time here until they do. And I really think that you should,
Let me,
go ahead.
yeah. And again, I think we made that perfectly clear.
Yes, I
in
agree.
the process
I agree.
2 years ago, that it made some sense to look at this issue.
Yeah.
And we did. We looked at it. We were told that it would be commercialized by a specific period of time. So until there's a commercial process that we can evaluate, I think it's difficult for us to get involved in trying to do analysis on it. And what bothers me also is that I was under the impression that the smoke and wheel issue was something that Deep had embraced in the process.
That was represented to us numerous times, Chairman, and to the point of Jameson Sinclair, you know, the representation to the board and to our staff is no problem, no permits needed. We didn't need any permits at Danbury. Not a big deal. Everything's good. Well, that's not true. And the important part of this is we haven't even talked about this, but the environmental justice. This is where this is really important. To the question of Commissioner Drake, where is this coming from? If it has to get trucked in, because they're by their own admission, they're saying there's 1.2 million gallons of fats, oils, and grease at the plant. We don't know that. I don't know how they know that.
We came in, it was 8,000 a day. That's what the plan would be, to bring in.
Yeah.
8,000 gallons a day.
Yeah.
Which, and they did also say, again, I'm not going to, they did say that you would consolidate it outside.
Yep.
8,000 gallons a day is not a lot of trucks. So I think that can be dealt with. But if we don't understand the money, it doesn't make
Yeah,
any sense.
but the trucks are 20, there's 20, they said 20 trucks a day.
No, they were going to, you consolidate them at another place than just bring the one, 8,000 gallons a day is not a lot of trucks. That's all, but anyways, I just.
Yeah, I mean, they say in their answer is they're gonna bring in 20 trucks a day. But the point is, and this is not, I'm not gonna put Jameson on the spot, but we have other groups at Deep that have said to us and will say that if you're going to change, when you're bringing in diesel trucks into an environmental justice community, this is going to trigger an air permit, as Jameson's mentioning, and then that's going to trigger, before they give you any air permits, before you do anything from Deep, before they give you anything, and as Jameson said, it's after you're getting ready to go to construction, so you've already spent your planning money, right? You get in front of Deep for air permits, and the first thing is, it's an environmental justice plan that you have to do first. And if that passes, then you can go to Jameson and get an air permit. Is that correct, Jameson? So, oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, if that's the case, Hartford, in their representation is going to be significantly larger, and so is in New Haven, than anything that's being done in Danbury. Am I right?
Yes, agreed. And thank you, Jameson, for that. And I just want to make one more point. Again, I'm only on number 4, so let's just call it where it is. They tell us that it costs $3.67 per gallon to produce biodiesel at Danbury. Again, they haven't produced 1 gallon of biodiesel, but they're telling us that with all this stuff that they don't know, commissioners, they don't know this, they don't know that, they don't know this. They need to do a preliminary design to determine this, this, and this. They're telling us that they know that it's only going to be $2 a gallon to produce biodiesel at the MDC. Well, how would you know that if you don't know what your financing is? If they finance themselves, they're going to be pulling a 6% interest rate or maybe an 8% interest rate from the banks. If MDC finances it, it's going to be 2% or 3%. So it's impossible to tell us that it's going to be $2 a gallon in number 4 to produce biodiesel when we don't even know what the deal is, the financing mechanisms, the staffing levels. So I really just stick with, it's really simple. As the chairman said, we went through this process thinking they were going to be up and running, producing biodiesel, and they're not. I think for us to waste any energy and time on this proposal until such time they actually are producing biodiesel and actually marketing it and selling it, and competing with the renewable market, however that plays out, we're going to have to invest money to move forward, and I don't think that would be prudent.
I think that was made perfectly
Yeah,
clear.
right.
I don't think there's any represent. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, on page 5 of their cover letter, they talk about the ethanol, the wet ethanol, and how they would dispose of it and all that. So there is an answer in there, just so we know. But to the other points, I think your point is well made, Mr. Chairman, and Councilor Drake. Commissioner Drake. we're going back a ways for that one. Yeah, I think it makes sense to wait for some production to take place before we move forward.
And there's a potential, I believe that DEEP has programs that they're, at least in solid waste, they're dealing with it, where they encourage a project that and I guess, Jameson, if you could respond to that, there are programs, but I don't believe that this fits into that. There's a solid waste program that they'll put up $4 million for a process that makes some sense. I don't know where that is now, but 6 months ago, we looked at that and we were looking at,
Yeah, I think what Jameson said is Nisha will be the one to talk to regarding
that issue, those issues.
regarding the hub and spoke process and whether or not that is something that DEEP was involved in approving.
So I think the first criteria has got to be that it's got to be commercialized, and I think we made that perfectly clear from the beginning. And this may well work.
Yeah.
And it may work in that function. I'm not taking issue, and I don't think anybody here is taking issue with that. But show us the commercialization process. When we initially talked about this 2 years ago, they had produced 5,000 gallons in an different environment. But again, the questions were legitimate questions, and I think that there's a lot of information they produced, and it's an interesting concept. But it's say commercialization was a trigger, but we would start to even consider.
And we're happy to wait and see.
Right.
And then if they do actually come online and actually start to produce, then we can really see how does this market work? I mean, I knew nothing about renewable biodiesel until the week we started reviewing, the proposals, and all of a sudden, the industry changes dramatically every day. Not just in biodiesel, but just in general technology, and there's just all these different advancements that you don't want to get wrapped into investing in a treatment plant that is going to be obsolete in 5 years or 3 years. So we gotta be cautious there. But I think you're right, Mr. Chairman. We sit, we wait, we watch, and if something it changes in a short period of time, we're happy to revisit this. That's all.
Any further discussion, Commissioner Patillo?
Chairman, this is an experimental process. It is not operational or tested process. We are not a research organization which can fund such a research for the nation. It's not only one, even in America, there is nothing tested for commercial purposes where we can make money. We are looking for increased revenue for MDC. This is the last thing we should be looking at or wasting any time and money for it.
Well, we aren't anywhere near it, money for it or anything else. This is the purpose of what we're doing now, is for information.
Okay.
That's what we're doing. This isn't for an RFP. This isn't any of that. It's to get information. Does it make sense? Commissioner Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Forgive me, my question may have already been asked. I've been unable to attend previous meetings. Has there been any discussion about the end product and where that goes? Our biggest, one of the things we have to overcome is we live in the north and we live in a cold climate. So depending on what that biodiesel is derived from, may control where the end product may have to go. Because some gel at like 40 degrees, 50 degrees, and it would be difficult to overcome that in the north. So has any of the presenters or those that responded to
Well,
questionnaire provided any information about the supply source?
They have, but primarily this would be additive, would it not, Scott?
Yeah.
It would be biodiesel additive to heating oil and things of that nature, so it's a blended product.
Yeah, so, and I think Dr. Parnas did a good job answering that question. I mean, he understands the chemistry of it, no doubt. And it is different across, as to your point, it's different in the Northeast as it is in the South. So, the rules are different, right? The mixing, your point is very important. I mean, I have said, the governor signed a legislation that says you will start by 2035, you will start to mix your home heating oil with 50% biodiesel. Well, I can tell you this, I asked this question 2.5 years ago of REA because they said you can use it in your trucks. And I said, well, you can use it in your trucks. What happens if my truck is under warranty? No, you can't use it in your truck. You can use it in trucks that are warranted, but most of our vehicles are under warranty because we have
And a kerosene in your garage.
Thank you. But imagine this. I just put a brand new boiler in my house last year, and then the governor says you will mix your heating oil with 50% biodiesel. How do you think that biodiesel is going to affect my burner? I don't know, but I guarantee it's not going to be good. So you're forcing, to your point, you're forcing a product into an industry, boilers at the house, your car, your truck, and you don't know how it's going to react. And you're absolutely right. The percentages and all that stuff is very important. Dr. Parnas was very clear. There's certain places that you can use 100%. The one thing that renewable biodiesel supposedly is better is because you can actually use it at 100%. You don't have to mix it. But this is stuff we don't know. You know, this is, we just don't have the expertise on this. And this is a major stock market industry that is changing rapidly. And we just got to be careful we don't jump in at the tail end of this. There was an article that I think I had Nikki pass around to everybody. There was a biodiesel plant in California that was the community was in uproars, and they canceled the construction of the biodiesel plant for all the reasons we're talking about, the air emissions. So I think we wait and see.
That wasn't, Scott, that wasn't for brown grease either. That was for regular.
It was biodiesel, right?
Yeah.
Biodiesel. But the point is that the different there's chemical differences between biodiesel, fats, oils, and grease, whether it's brown or yellow, and renewable. Two different processes, and two different air quality issues, emissions issues, greenhouse gases issues. All I'm suggesting is, and I think we've already said it, is let's sit and wait. Let's watch. Let's see what happens, and let's see if Danbury can actually make a profit, right? And let's see where that profit is. Our bond counsel has told us MDC cannot receive a tax credit. We're a nonprofit. We can't. So therefore, who's going to get the tax credit? And it can't be us, so it's got to be REA,
That'd be a
right?
private public.
Yeah,
But we don't know what that would.
right. But anyways, I think I said it.
So I think we've discussed it at length in terms of where we are. Excuse me, Tom, go ahead.
So there's a couple other things I'd like to just add for food for thought. So one of the statements that was made was solving our grease problem at the plant. We do not have a grease problem at the plant. We are able to very efficiently and effectively handle any of the small amount of grease that comes into the plant. Now, we've talked about problems in the collection system that we tried to get help from REA to solve that was, in my opinion, a complete failure. But at the plant itself, we do not have a grease problem. So the grease has energy inherent to it because it's a type of oil, right? So there's a BTU value in grease, just like there is in gasoline or natural gas. So the other thing that is not included in the economics here that we have to keep in mind, every drop of grease that you extract from the plant and you turn into biodiesel is a drop of grease that does not go to our incinerator. So that heating value is going to be made up by purchased natural gas that will cost us money because we have to maintain certain temperatures in the incinerators. And you can only use that one little BTU one time. So if you don't let us use it in the incinerator, but think about big picture of what we're doing. We don't have a problem with grease, yet the proposal is extract that grease and turn it into a product that requires infrastructure, chemicals, permitting, so that you can burn it. Well, it seems to me it's a lot simpler and more efficient to take the grease that's inherently in the plant that's not causing us problems and we can burn in the incinerator versus all the infrastructure, chemicals, permitting, money, economics, RINs, all that stuff, and you're still going to burn it. At the end of the day, that drop of grease is getting burned. We can either do it simply at the plant or through a very complex chemical process, and eventually it will come to your home or your car or your truck and you'll burn it. But at the end of the day, it's still getting burned. So it's a lot of effort to create infrastructure to burn that same drop of grease. But I want to be clear, we do not have a grease problem at the Hartford plant. We do not have one at the East Hartford plant. We do not have one at the Rocky Hill plant. And we do not have one at the Windsor-Pequannock plant. So we're not seeking a solution because there's no problem at the facilities.
And Tom, just to add, you're also getting a tipping fee that we don't have to share with anybody.
Correct.
We don't have a partner.
Correct.
Do the other 124 waste treatment plants have a grease problem? I understand you.
So I'd like to address that. I'm aware that there are 79 permitted wastewater treatment plants in the state of Connecticut. I've heard numbers of 104 and 124. I don't know where that number comes from. I'm aware, but that might be a good question for Nisha Patel Scott. I'm aware of 79 wastewater treatment plants, and I haven't been to every treatment plant in the state, but I've been to a lot of them. I have never seen a big tank labeled grease at a plant because they do not extract that grease. It is removed in the primary clarifiers, it is commingled with sludge, and it is sent to a facility like ours or one of the others in the state. There's only a few places in the state that accept sludge.
So Tom, just to add to that, how many outside communities send their sludge to us? Roughly
30.
30. So 30 communities send their sludge to us. In their sludge that they send, is their fats, oils, and grease commingled with the sludge?
Absolutely.
So we're burning it. So we're using that to make BTUs to keep our temperatures at 1400 degrees so that we stay within our permanent. So if we remove that fats, oils, and grease from our waste stream and from their waste stream, then what they're sending us will be less BTU value as well.
Correct.
Where's Danbury getting theirs? I'll go back to the beginning then. Someone in Danbury made an analysis.
No, they made a political decision.
Can we do one thing? We got Commissioner Johnson that has a question. Gary, go ahead. Gary. Commissioner, I'm sorry, Johnson. Further discussion. I think this is obviously not ready for commercialization. And let's see what happens. Is there any objection, any additional information someone's requesting? That's what this process is an informational issue. Okay, anything else?
No.
I just wanted to remind you that next Thursday, the 27th, is the staff review of the CTEC submission. And then on August 10th is the CTEC presentation.
The presentation is the 10th and not the 27th. That was
Correct.
okay. Opportunity for general public comment. Commissioner's request for future agenda items. Motion to adjourn is, Hunter? Is there, without exception, we stand adjourned? Thanks. Okay.